Alright, so let's look at how deep you need to go when you scallop. What I have here is one example, and this is actually a little too deep. So, oh, we have nice color changes there from my cam. If you look at this one, you can see that it looks nicely scalloped, but it's not too deep. But what happens for me when the scallops is very deep is that it creates these valleys, of course, which is the whole point of scalloping. You have these little cavities here, and when your finger goes from over the frets here, they meet a little. They meet steep hills on their way up, so it's a little. It's not so elegant to scallop this deep, although it looks pretty radical, and that's the main reason why it's that deep. It's because it's the first one I did, and as you can see here, the fretboard markers has suffered this treatment, but and that's actually a funny thing, because Fender fretboard markers are pretty shallow, while Squire fretboard markers go much deeper. Not that that's better, but it's just different. So you should be aware of that when you're dealing with a Fender neck, you need to really focus on that. Also, Ibanez seems to be pretty deep, so I haven't experienced it there. So, but this is too deep for me. Unless you like the looks of it, you can go that deep. But in my book, I'd like to keep as much wood on the neck as possible and not take away more than necessary. I'll be sure to make some high definition photos of this, so you can see the different necks and you can see what I consider to be the ideal depth, so you can get a good impression of that. Let me go on to a subtle scallop, this one. And as you can see, we have a glossy finish here, which I really like the looks of. Just look at that shiny neck there. I really like the maple neck with that glossy look, but I don't like to play it. So, and that's the most important thing. So I like the matte finish better, because the glossy varnish has a tendency to be sticky. Like it's harder to slide your hand. You have more resistance on your way, and not only do you have more resistance, it's also sticky, so that you sometimes get stuck and then you have to use force to get on from there. But my real point of pulling this neck up is that you can see it's an extremely subtle scallop, but it's effective. You get the advantages of being able to bend much easier. It's not easier, but it's safer. You don't lose your string, because you have, especially up here where the scallop seems deeper, but it isn't, because, let me just get that in your face here. If you look at the cavities here, or the valleys in between the frets, you can see that it seems deeper on the higher frets than on the lower frets, but that's simply because there's more distance between the frets down here, so the valley gets larger in some way. I hope you get my point. But this is not an ideal depth if you want all the advantages of scalloping. You get like 80% by just doing a scallop as subtle as this one, because it's like having more than big frets on a neck, so the string really gets up there. But this is not the ideal. That's what I wanted to say. Let me show you something that just hits the mark. And again, this is not a neck that I play a lot. As you can see, this is out of service. Let me just get those necks out of reach here so I'm not damaging anything. This neck tinted very radically, actually, and I'm going to show you that as well, how to do that. Because when you scallop, if you scallop a guitar just 1 or 2 years old, or maybe 3 or 4 or 10 years old for that matter, you remove the tint, and then you're left with a very bright surface here, and while you have a head that's yellowish, and you need to just compensate for that before you put on the varnish, if it's a maple fretboard, that is. But this scallop is perfect in that it gives you just the right amount of depth, so your finger is not touching the fretboard when you play it, but you only have like 0.5 millimeter or even less down to the fret there, or the wood. But let me just see if I can get that in your face here again. So you see these differences are of course small, but they're there. And if you were here with me, you could see the exact difference. And I'm going to do some photos of this so you can see it in detail, how it differs. But that's really the point here, is to remove just as much wood so your fingers doesn't touch the wood, but not more than that, because not that your neck is going to be ruined by that, but it's just not necessary, and there's no need to remove more than you, unless you like the looks of it, and you want to keep your fretboard markers as well, and that's really easy if you just stay in that zone. And in the long term, even though when you scallop the first time, you want to really make a radical scallop, so that you know that you can see your work. You can we got a scallop neck here, it's awesome, and you want the full group of advantages that you get from it. In the long run, you're going to like the perfect scallop better, the depth there. At least that's my experience. I don't know if that's you too, but let's just look at why it is that we scallop. Because most people believe or have this thought that you scallop a neck so that the string does not touch the wood. But the string actually never touches the wood, or seldom touch the wood, unless you use really a lot of force. What touches the wood in between the frets when you play a neck is the finger. So the finger goes deeper than the string. And perhaps it doesn't make sense first off here, but if you look at it, if this is your string, like that, and you have a fret here, and you have a fret there, you have a fret here, and so on, then what happens is, see if I can get it so you can see it. What happens is, if you have your string here lying on top of these frets, actually now it's pushed down so it touches the frets. But when your finger goes down here, the finger doesn't stop where the string stops. It's not sitting here like pushing down on the string. Sorry, you can't see that, perhaps, like that. It's not, sitting there on top of the string. It goes beyond the string, goes much further than the string, because you have this fatty part here on your fingertip. It's hard to see if I push it into my fingertip, but if I do like this, I can exaggerate what happens. So if this is the string, or the edge of the string, and it's pushed into the finger, you can see that the fatty part of the finger goes much further down than the string itself. And it's this fatty part that touches the wood. And when it touches the wood, you suddenly have friction. So when you try to bend a string, instead of just moving the string, which is on top of the fretboard here, instead of just bending that and having to move it across the frets here with metal meeting metal, then suddenly your finger has to resist or move through the resistance that you get from the wood. I'm really exaggerating now, but and that feeling here is what you don't have to live with when you have a scallop fretboard. So that's really it. And at the same time, what happens when you have a non-scallop fretboard is that you can lose the string, because you can't really grab it from the side like this. We're going to talk about, or have talked about that in another video. So you can't really push it like that. When it's scalloped, you have lots of room. You can push it sideways if you want. But I don't need to repeat myself. So let's just look at it. If you look at it from this angle, if your eye was here, see if you can draw an eye there. If you're looking at it from this angle, so you see the string like this. Let's say this is the string. So you're looking at it like if I was holding the marker like this. So this is the way you're looking at the string now. And you imagine the finger. Come, let's just do two of them. So what we imagine in our heads is that the finger is going like this and pushing down the string towards the fretboard, and we have the frets here. But that's not what happens, because what happens is your finger is going to look like this. Maybe slightly, oh sorry, you can't see it, maybe slightly exaggerated, but so, and you have a fret here and you have a fret there, and then you have the fretboard right there. So, and you can test this. Just take your guitar, just push down, and then look at what actually touches the fretboard. And it's not the string, it's your finger. So what we want to make space for is your finger. We want to remove enough wood here to prevent your finger from touching the wood. So that's the whole discipline. That's what we want to do. A long explanation for something very simple. And on this fretboard, this doesn't happen. This is still so subtle that my finger is going to occasionally touch the wood. If I play like this with a classical stance here, and my fingers go, I keep my finger on in the middle of the fretboard on the back here, and I play like this at all times, then my fingers are not going to touch the wood. But as soon as I start, grabbing the neck and do blues bends and stuff like that, then my finger is going to slide across the wood. It still gives me a lot more control, and I can really push the string sideways. So I get the advantages, but I personally just love the feeling of not having to deal with the wood altogether with my fingers here. So I prefer a little less wood than that. And so that was the explanation here, and let's move on to the next video.